Welcome to the Athletic NBA Daily for August 5th, 2025. I'm Zena, joined by Baraheni, and today we're thrilled. We got Sam Amick here from the Athletic giving us all the inside scoop from around the association. Sam, welcome back to the show. It's been a while. We're happy to have you.
Thank you, Zena. Thank you, Es. Great to see you guys. Hope you're having a good summer.
For sure.
So far, so good. Yeah, probably not as good as De'Aaron Fox, though. Probably not.
Es, you didn't get a $230 million bump this summer?
Not yet. Not that I've heard of yet. But.
Okay, let's set up the context real quick, because Es, You're absolutely right. De'Aaron Fox is probably having the best summer of all of us here. 4-year, $229 million extension with the Sacramento Kings. Fox was in that final year of his last deal. And of course, we know that Wemby was a fan of Fox. And I feel like, Sam, that had a lot to do with this number and this commitment to Fox.
Yeah, it's interesting, guys, because, when the trade went down with the Kings and the Spurs, this seemed like a foregone conclusion in terms of, the part that De'Aaron was going to play in the Spurs' future. And it seemed like De'Aaron had kind of won the Wemby sweepstakes when it comes to like a bunch of young, or like in their prime players who knew that being within Victor Wembanyama's gravitational circle was a smart move, right? But then they end up drafting Dylan Harper. Some folks were speculating, that was Fox's role going to be the same? Were they going to give him the extension? But they go ahead and they do it. 4 years, $229 million, no options, all guaranteed money. So he's there to stay, and we'll see how it works. Obviously, after that injury in the second half of last season, kind of cut short to, the first little chapter.
Were you surprised by it at all that this went down now, given the timing and, like you mentioned, the Dylan Harper of it all that happened?
Not surprised, because admittedly, I didn't have any hard intel telling me that there was any reason to doubt it. You always have to kind of filter how much of it is just, we're all human, right? So you're reacting to the conversation on the internet versus the question of, did R.C. Buford and Brian Wright and that group in San Antonio change the way they look at De'Aaron Fox? And clearly they didn't. So not shocked. I think if you go back to that trade, now granted, I think the Spurs certainly got the better of the Kings in that deal. But, they made a big commitment to target him, and he, had a one-team list as he pushed his way out of Sacramento. San Antonio is where he wanted to be. And obviously he doesn't do something like that if he doesn't feel pretty confident about the long term. And
speaking about feeling confident about the long term, I feel like this is clearly a future forward-facing move, right? You're thinking about Wemby, you're thinking about that group, thinking about all the youth you have on this team in a Stephon Castle and Devin Vassell, and also Dylan Harper included in that now. So what do you think this means for the franchise moving forward in terms of the impact they can make in the West?
We'll see. I think honestly, it's a real kind of, toss up and one of the more interesting but unknown teams in the West. As much of a leap as Victor took, until the unfortunate deep vein thrombosis injury, it didn't ultimately reflect in the standings in the kind of way that I think reflected, the transcendent nature of his talent. You know what I mean? This is not a case of him elevating that team as quickly as some people thought that he could. And, we didn't really get to see Fox and Wemby all that much. And so you don't know. They're going to have to go through and I think, spend the first half of that season with Mitch Johnson and his staff trying to figure out what they have and trying to get an identity going. Because as you guys know, the West is just absolutely loaded going into next year. So I do like it on paper. And I think that Fox is going to be motivated to go out and kind of show it's not only a matter of getting this contract, but anytime you have a guy push his way out, there's kind of that baggage that comes with it. You got to justify all the drama that you created. But I really don't know yet, how good they can be together.
Yeah, whenever these contracts come out, it's always like sticker shock reaction from everybody where it's like, he got paid this much. What is it? Right. But generally, if you look at Fox and the flexibility the Spurs still have, tons of picks still available to them, obviously. And a lot of their guys are still on their rookie scale contracts. Right. So they have that kind of window of opportunity to allow Fox's deal to kick in and then have to deal with the other guys around him. Mainly Victor Wembanyama, who likely will get that max extension whenever he asks for it. A guy who might not be getting the extension he's asking for is Jonathan Kuminga. I mean, this has been a drawn out process. Zena, I know you are very in tune with the Jonathan Kuminga process. Sam, now you are very well versed in the Jonathan Kuminga process as well. What is the latest on what Jonathan Kuminga will do next season? And is it with the Warriors, or are you leaning elsewhere?
Well, I mean, to your opening line, S, about him not getting the extension that he wants, that part is obviously black and white. Like, he's been pushing for a long time. The Warriors end up putting 2 years, $45 million on the table. And that sounds okay. But then you look at it, okay, team option, second season, also a request to get rid of the inherent no trade clause that would come with essentially a 1 year guaranteed contract so that they would have flexibility. It puts Jonathan in a situation where, the salary for next season would be good. It'd be $21.7 million. But in terms of independence and freedom that he's trying to push for in restricted free agency, it doesn't get him that. So, he declined that, still signs that maybe he'll go the nuclear route and take the qualifying offer. That deadline is October 1st. And obviously that's a risk on both sides, where $7.9 million. It's funny, to your question of the latest, like when I wrote about this for Friday, I mean, my only goal was to try to clarify, you look at these situations and you say, okay, where is there any meat left on the bone in terms of information? So the Kings offer had not really been clarified. And so that's mainly what I ended up getting into. And those discussions, to give you the quick timeline, I mean, they began in early June. They did talk early last week. The two teams did, but it's not the type of thing that it's been hot and heavy for quite a while. Malik Monk and a first round pick is the crux of the offer that the Kings are putting on the table. Again, but we got to get into the details. It started off with a discussion about a 2031 first round pick, where the Warriors would get the least favorable of the Kings or San Antonio's first rounder. The Warriors didn't want that. Then they ended up talking about 2030 first rounder, but they wanted lottery protections on that. The Warriors said, we want that thing to be unprotected. Now, on the side of all of this, and this is another obstacle, is the reality that because the Kings don't want to go into the tax, and they refuse to go into the tax in this deal, the Warriors have got to move either Moses Moody or Buddy Hield in this trade. And they're not really interested in doing that. So obstacles abound. The Warriors this week, like Tim Kawakami reported today, I think it was, they're signaling that they expect Jonathan to be on their roster at the start of next season. And I'm not trying to poke holes in that at all, but it is, listen, the deadline is until October 1st. Camp isn't for quite some time. This is the time of year when there's absolutely no downside in having your stance be, okay, we're done talking, because you can always pick the phone up a month from now.
I think about the fact that, Cat got traded from Minnesota to New York right before the deadline, right? You never know with what these GMs are cooking up, especially behind closed doors. And also, when you think about the Warriors, the stance had been Jordan Poole's not getting traded. And then Jordan Poole got traded. And so we know that these things are very possible in terms of changing at the last second. I'm wondering, Sam, in your reporting, in the folks that you've been talking to, for us fans, this has been dragging out for a long time. For those of us that are analysts, fans, watching this, hearing about this, it's been dragging out for a long time. Do you feel any sense of like burden on this conversation? Does it feel as heavy as it feels like for other people watching from the outside in?
Honestly, probably not. I mean, and that's the luxury of, if you're going to be a GM and you're going to be in it, you kind of have to put your RoboCop hat on. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be non-emotional. Now, that's not always the case. I mean, when the Warriors traded Klay Thompson, there was a ton of emotion involved. And you see situations like this. With Jonathan, okay, I'm sure, there's frustration on the Warriors side, especially when at times when his messaging has been that he feels disrespected. It's easy for the Warriors to take that stance of, okay, it must be nice to be disrespected at $22 million a year, but even that I think is a little disingenuous, because, all right, but you want him to waive the no trade clause and you want to have a team option. So, but it just I think it is what it is. And the other part of this backdrop on Golden State side is that while I certainly think that Joe Lacob is at peace with the idea that they need to do what's best for the franchise, and that means, getting as much as possible for him. And because of his affinity for Jonathan, and I think the way that he has valued him over the years, and they used a number 7 pick on him back in 2021, there is, call it a stubbornness or just a determination to make sure that he feels good about this trade. And I think that's one of the driving forces behind why it hasn't happened yet, because the standard is still pretty high.
Just wanted to follow up and kind of ask about free agency at this point in general. It feels like a lot of the restricted free agents are kind of holding up the rest of the market. Is that the sense you're getting when talking to agents and front office people, that, this situation, Kuminga, other restricted free agents, it's kind of holding what else could happen in free agency?
To some degree. I mean, we've gotten down into with all due respect to the guys on the list, we're down in the 3rd and 4th and 5th tier of the list. But to use the Warriors as an example, you kind of have, this unofficial thing of like, it's widely expected that Al Horford, DeAnthony Melton, they're looking like they're leaning heavily towards the Warriors, but they can't do that until the Kuminga thing is done. Right. Gary Payton II has his situation. Yeah. The Warriors need max flexibility right now, and they just can't afford to put a couple extra million on their books. And so all of these teams, certainly they lack flexibility when they're, have these guys situations in limbo. But you can do that because at this stage, those other guys know their market, and their market's probably not changing. You know what I mean? If they haven't already chosen to go somewhere else, then you can go ahead and hold out and get the first order of business done.
Okay, when we get back, we'll talk about the first order of business in LA that had people staying up at night. But now LA can rest easy. Okay, now we've been talking about money being thrown around. In the Bay, it's being kept. In San Antonio, it's being thrown around. In LA, it's being happily given to Luka Dončić. And we got to talk about this extension, $165 million extension over 3 years. It's the blockbuster deal of the summer, I would say. I mean, De'Aaron can try and get in there, but this was the one that was making people go, holding their breaths. Don't know if this is going to happen. What's going to be the next move for Luka in LA? And this was huge, Sam. What were the implications of Luka signing, not signing? Why was this such a kind of big moment that everyone was kind of holding their breath for?
It's funny, guys, when Lakers GM Rob Pelinka took the stage at Luka's press conference, and I like Rob. He always cracks me up at these pressers because he's dressed nice, he's ready for the cameras, good looking dude, and you can tell that he's rehearsed whatever, form of a speech he has. Yep. But I thought the writer in me thought that I wanted to give little, standing O, because he landed the bird when he gets up there and he says, 6 months ago to the day, we chose Luka Dončić by way of trade with the Dallas Mavericks. And today Luka Dončić chose the Lakers. And that's really what it's about. It's like, let's waste no time. 30 seconds in, let's tell the people why we're here. Yeah. Let's tell the people why we have a photo gallery that we built on the floor of the Lakers training facility, and why they're planning a party in Vegas to go to the Sphere and watch the Backstreet Boys, and which I didn't realize Luka's a huge fan, apparently.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that.
So but as far as what it means, Zena, when they traded for him, the Lakers are always going to be able to carry themselves with some level of confidence that stars are going to want to stick around because it's Hollywood, it's Laker Nation. Yep. But they did not have any assurances from Luka or his people that he was for sure going to re-sign when they traded for him. In fact, if you look back on the negotiations with the Mavericks and Nico Harrison, they essentially used the fear of not being able to re-sign Luka as one of the justifications for not having another first round pick in that deal, that they could rightfully say,
incredible work done by the Lakers, by the way. Incredible work done.
Yeah. And so, that's why it matters. And for all the Lakers foibles, and, there's times when they are kind of run like a mom and pop shop, and that's going to change now that Mark Walter bought it and the checkbook looks a little bit different. They have this culture, and this is to Jeannie Buss's credit, that continues to stand the test of time when it comes to the way superstar players are treated.
For sure.
Even, and I know we're going to get to this, if you talk to LeBron and his people about his Lakers experience, even when there's frustrations about the roster, one of the consistent, things in terms of feedback is that the Lakers really know how to treat stars and how to make them feel the love and give them a place where they don't want to leave. And so Luka, it didn't take him too long. It helped the Lakers that he's personality wise known to be a guy that doesn't really like change. That's why the Mavs trade kind of rocked him to his core. He didn't expect it and didn't want to leave Dallas. So, he's there for 3 more years. He's set up now to, if all goes well and they go in the right direction, to sign that massive $400 million deal that would come because he was 10 years in the league. So, all is well when it comes to the Lakers and Luka.
But some eyebrows were naturally raised, as you mentioned, when LeBron James wasn't at the presser. Neither was Bronny James, by the way, both golfing from what I saw in a video the other day. But generally, there's been this question basically all summer about LeBron and him opting into the final year of his contract. What will happen with LeBron and the Lakers? What is your sense at this point in August on where LeBron is at with the Lakers and what they might do moving forward with LeBron?
Well, I mean, Zena said it earlier. This is that time of year where you kind of go, okay, here's where we are, but because there's another month left, and never say never. I did look into this again this week, and it's becoming this kind of repetitive phone calls where, hey, I know you're sick of this question, but where are we at with LeBron? And because obviously if you go back to the end of the season, and going into the off season, Rich Paul's statement that he put out, LeBron's agent from Clutch Sports, it was alarming when he decided to publicly say that LeBron wanted to win championships. And I'm paraphrasing, but that he was continue to monitor the Lakers roster. That was alarming. It's not a matter of Rich walking it back since then, but he hasn't doubled down either. And, LeBron, okay, he didn't go to Luka's press conference. He didn't go to Vegas. He did FaceTime him. You know what I mean? And there's part of me, to be honest, like, man, he's 43 years old or whatever he is now. Like, he's 41. Like, he's deserved the right to, shoot a text to Luka and say, I love you, buddy. We'll see you in a little bit. Now the Bronny one is funny. I was talking to our Lakers beat writer, Dan Wojcicki, about that. It's an interesting discussion where Bronny's in a tricky spot, right? Because he's a teammate and most of the young teammates were at the press conference, but then dad wants to go golf, so those are the challenges of being Bronny James. But for now, I do expect LeBron to be with the Lakers to start the year. If I'm being honest, guys, I think part of this is like, listen, even if there were certain scenarios that LeBron found enticing or interesting within the past 2 months or 6 weeks that he thought about maybe pursuing, the nature of this collective bargaining agreement and the way the league works right now is such that it's just not as easy, even for somebody like LeBron, to raise your hand and say, I want to go there on a max deal. As good as he still is, second team All NBA, it's not good enough to have your way all the time. And so for me, this feels a little bit like, he knows, like, this is, even if he doesn't see the Lakers as legitimate title contenders right now, he can't necessarily get to a legitimate title contender, at least in the way that he wants to. So, he's going to ride it out. So, it could change, but right now I think he'll be on the Lakers.
I think that's the greatest part about this, is the riding it out is going to inevitably get into the superstar succession line, right? You think about what the Lakers want to do in terms of changing their, quote, face of the franchise into the next generation.
Yep.
I don't know why, but immediately what comes to mind is Cooper Flagg's trash talk at Summer League. LeBron can't save you now, Bronny. But thinking about, what does that look like for the flipping of the page while still having LeBron there, obviously, to help kind of bolster that next step for LA. Luka's bought in. He's chosen the LA. Now, what does it look like for LA to choose him again and make sure that he has all the tools around him to get to that next step?
So that's where I think the Lakers are in a tough spot because, and I was the first one to report this a couple months ago, when they had contract talks with LeBron and you have no discussion about anything beyond next season, then again, I don't care how much money you've given the man, like, there's an element of disrespect with that. And so in a perfect world, LeBron would be not only Luka's biggest supporter, but let's not kid ourselves. He'd be the guy saying, okay, buddy, they called you chunky. They called you lazy. Like nobody's calling me those things. And I'm, one of the hardest workers, if not the hardest worker in the history of the game. Let me be your Yoda. Well, that level of buy-in inevitably is probably going to be less when one guy gets the whole boat contract wise and the other guy, and we can kind of not mince words here either. The other guy is basically being told, we would love nothing more than to celebrate your retirement next summer. And anything outside of that is tricky for us in terms of roster construction and our future. And if you're LeBron, it's a good problem to have, but we've never seen this before where a guy is so good that it's not a matter of his current team not wanting him. It's a matter of, does his current team want him at $60 million? And, and having you potentially wear out your welcome, despite the fact that you're still playing pretty damn good basketball.
This is the really interesting part where the Lakers are at, where, for a lack of better words, they're trying to toggle two timelines, even though realistically Luka Doncic's timeline is right now. Like he even said it in his press conference. He's ready to get back to the NBA finals. And there is this emphasis on future flexibility, cap space flexibility, pick flexibility, to go out and chase that next star. And that is the question moving forward. Who is that next guy? I mean, last year when we had this conversation, Sam, you brought up De'Aaron Fox and the potential of what might happen in Sacramento. And now we've seen De'Aaron Fox get moved and he's in San Antonio. He just inked his deal. Who is that next guy? Is it clearly Giannis that everybody is waiting for, or is there someone else that we're watching for here as we head into next season?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of top tier guys, it's definitely Giannis, and that's one of the most unique summertime situations that I can remember, because the guy has not signaled anything in terms of wanting out, but again, he hasn't signaled that he's all the way in either. Stuff continues to trickle out, and I'm going to keep leaning on Zena's point that she made earlier, is that September a lot of times is a really interesting month. Damian Lillard got traded to September a couple of years back.
Donovan Mitchell too, I believe, right? Yeah.
So it does happen. So Giannis is at the top of that list. Nikola Jokic, I'm not putting him on the list, but I am one who you do have to pay attention to just contract situation. I don't care if the Denver Nuggets are, the absolutely beloved favorite group of people for Nikola Jokic, and that he's happy as a clam. Like his choice not to sign that extension this summer, even with the financial reasons that he can justify for it. Like whenever a superstar doesn't sign the extension, the rest of the league still has hope. That's all there is to it. So the Lakers, for example, and the Clippers, LA is suddenly really interesting again in this regard. Both of those franchises are trying to keep flexibility for players like Giannis and Joker. So that's the top of the list. You got to go a long ways down the list for this name, but I do think that Trae Young's situation is still interesting.
I figured that was the guy. Yeah.
Being worth monitoring, just because and again, we talk about good problems to have. The Hawks have done so many good things this summer, and they obviously made a change in the front office, and they're going in the right direction. And really the relationship with Trae has evolved in a way that I think reflects really well on him and them. And he deserves credit for changing his game in a way. The question now is, when he looks in the mirror in terms of contract, is he still see himself as a max or bust type of guy? Because if he does, then that's probably going to be, and probably already is, a sticky conversation out there. And that's where this is a time in the NBA when, to put it in a Lakers context, the Lakers for the longest time, they just wanted to hand out the biggest contracts to the biggest guys, because that was their ethos. You just can't do that and get away with it anymore if you're the Lakers or the Hawks, and you can't do that. And so with Trae, what kind of extension fits into their future and what they want to do, and how does he see that, until they have something done? I think that's worth watching.
There was a tweet I saw about particularly the Bucks, even after the Miles Turner trade, and you're looking at this roster and you're like, what can this team do? It was really hard to come up with some answers. I mean, even in the comments,
I saw
the
same thing, probably.
Like it was a lot of shoulder shrugs. But you can't deny the fact that Giannis is such a formidable force. And I'm very curious if he's playing this incredibly coy, or if we are just like searching for drama this summer, trying to find something out of it.
Zena, I think it's a little bit analogous to the way we just broke down some of the challenges facing LeBron. Like, even if you have a level of discontent, even somebody like Giannis can't go wherever he can go wherever he wants almost, but it might be a Carmelo Anthony to the Knicks situation where you gutted the roster to get there. And now, why the hell did I leave Milwaukee? You know what I mean?
Dollars.
And that's the biggest thing. So, and then you look at the East and the Pacers getting decimated by injury, losing Miles Turner and Jason Tatum, all those things. Of course, the Bucks angle has become Giannis. We can do this. We can be near the top of the East. The other thing that I always want to make a point to highlight on the Giannis calculus that I find so interesting is that, he and Damian Lillard, really good relationship, obviously didn't work on the floor like they had hoped it would. And what we learned through that experience is that even though Giannis at times, I think, gets exhausted by his point guard duties, I think giving them up, I don't think he enjoyed that much. Like if you remember midway through the season, he had a really fascinating quote about, again, paraphrasing here, but like he talked about it. It was a little bit of a reach, but he talked about a cookie jar and how when you're growing up and, you have siblings or brothers and everybody's putting their hand in the cookie jar. Well, then your vibe is edgy and you're trying to get in there. If you're an only child, you're kind of just putting your hands in there. You have whatever freedom, confidence. Right. Yeah. You get whatever you want. And the takeaway was, damn, you really want the ball, and the Bucks know that. And they are partly counting on that as being an important part of their pitch, which is like, listen, Doc's going to, support point Giannis. And you love, Bobby Portis, he's back. Miles, we'll see how that fits. But yeah, it's crunchy out there. I was at the press conference in Vegas when the Bucks introduced Miles Turner, and to walk into that room and leave the room without any clarity as to like, man, did Miles and Giannis like even ever connect? Like the vibe was a little strange. Yeah. The Bucks were a little defensive about their communication with Giannis, basically saying, we've known him forever. We talk all the time. So yeah, I mean, we're still watching it, but we'll see what he does.
It's so funny to me to watch the Giannis talk and debate about this at this point, because, if you look at Giannis and what he's liked, to your point about the cookie jar, even post the playoffs, right after they got eliminated from by the Pacers, he said, point forwards are my favorite type of player in the NBA. He cited a bunch of players. Yeah. He cited Pascal Siakam, and he said being able to dish the ball out. And to his point, like they built a roster that kind of makes sense to that. Tons of shooters. Miles Turner can space the floor. They can theoretically put that out. I guess the pitch is just, Giannis, do you want to carry this team and potentially win an MVP next season? That's the gap year pitch here.
Sam, and to add a little more meat on that bone, the way the Pacers, have kind of handled the Bucks the last couple of years, absolutely, I thought was so interesting because the Bucks and Giannis have had such I don't know what other word to put on it, but a little bit of an arrogance towards the Pacers, right? Where they've kind of carried themselves like, man, this team should not be beating us. So if I'm John Horst and the Bucks, I'm using that as part of my pitch too. Like, bro, the Pacers just got to the finals. You know what I mean? Like, we're better than them and that type of a thing. Even if that's not true, I almost think it helps their case and their cause that a team that nobody thought was going to be in the finals was there on the biggest stage.
It's very interesting. I feel like more and more as we see these stars continue to climb and try to figure out their placement in the league, though, like a Giannis, I mean, even like a LeBron, it's going to be, do I choose a team or do I choose the dollars?
Right.
And that is going to be the frustrating thing. All right. Before you go, Sam, is there anything else we should be keeping an eye on as we close out the summer?
Nothing's coming to mind. I enjoyed, if the folks haven't read the Joe Varden piece on the 5-year anniversary of the bubble, I thought that was a fun read. Took me back down memory lane. I can't believe it's already been 5 years. And, it was cathartic. I publicly shared not the deep version, but a little anecdote about how my I don't know what else to say. My dumbass almost got ejected from the bubble 5 years ago when I had, glasses of wine with a few front office executives during quarantine. Broke the rules and now it's a distant memory. but that was a heck of a time. It was a fun story. Joe reached out to a lot of people for that one, but
That's awesome.
we're tracking restricted free agency, Giannis talk, Lakers, and that's about it for now.
They need to do a documentary on the bubble. I know the NBA had cameras in there. Just,
Yeah, I don't know where that project's at because I remember I sat down for some stuff in the bubble that never saw the light of day. So there's footage without question. Not to out him, but my guy, Andy Thompson from the league, he's always got the footage. So, Andy's up to something, but maybe one of these days.
Thank you so much, Sam, for coming in and giving us the inside scoop, for breaking the rules, for having the relationships necessary to be able to give us this inside scoop. Guys, go read them over at The Athletic. Also, go subscribe to The Athletic, follow, like, share this show. We love doing this for you guys. Please enjoy the rest of your day. This has been The Athletic NBA Daily.